time ago.
Okay, I'll get out and push here. Oh shit. Okay, right. So welcome to the BlindsideChat YouTube channel. This will be our first, well, I suppose our second go, but as with everything we do, we usually take a second go. Or 3 or 4. Yeah, so today we're just gonna make a few videos, a few discussion topics, not necessarily talk about games per se or what's been happening on the field, but a little bit more off the field. The background here, we're sitting here in a suburb of sort of like an area of Seoul, next to a river somewhere. So myself, I'm Stefan from South Africa.
I'm Andrew Farrell, I'm from Dublin, and yeah, if you haven't been watching any of our other YouTube videos before, we did a lot of them throughout the Six Nations, but I mean the games were on late for us over here, so we'd had a few beers at that point as well, but it's a lunchtime here on a Saturday. It's a beautiful day. I don't know if you can make that out as well, and we're going to try and do this a lot more throughout the summer, especially with the June internationals coming up. As Steph was saying, not so much on a game-by-game basis like the Six Nations, but more talking about the relevant news stories of our time, kind of podcasty form, but in a YouTube video instead. So if you like our content, please share it, please let your friends know what we're doing, and we'll try and make our podcasts or our videos interesting as we go along. Hopefully the background noise isn't too bad. We're kind of near a couple of roads and a train line here, but as Steph was saying, noises like that. But as Steph was saying, there is a kind of light of nice background beauty going on, so hopefully we're able to bring that through in the video too.
Right, yeah, we're too cheap to basically get a studio of any shape or form, so you'll be enjoying a lot of the sights and sounds of Seoul as, you know, we make our videos. So the first topic we're going to discuss today is the whole situation in Ulster with the rape case that recently took place. The players there that have now been cut out of the squad and you can't find anywhere to play. There were rumors I read recently, talks of them going to play for Seoul. So if you're maybe from the southern hemisphere, or if you've been from the northern hemisphere but you've been living under a rock, Andrew, can you give us the quick lowdown? What happened there?
Right, so let's talk about what happened first before we can. There's a main point we want to bring up about this, but yeah. So Paddy Jackson, Ireland's backup number 10 to Johnny Sexton, and Stuart Olding, a centre, a really talented centre himself, were accused of rape with 2 other guys. Well, one other guy, another fella, was in court for different reasons, perverting the course of justice, or whatever they call it these days. And they were all acquitted of the charges, but the nature of the WhatsApp messages that they sent each other became public, and Jackson and Olding have since lost their jobs with Ulster and the IRFU because they were deemed to have brought the game into disrepute. So we can talk long and hard about that. A lot of people already have, but either way, they've lost their jobs with the IRFU. They'll never play for Ireland again, and they will not be playing for Ulster again. So 2 internationals, one of them was absolutely going to the World Cup, Paddy Jackson. Stuart Olding probably had an outside chance of doing so. Now they can't get jobs because sponsors and season ticket holders are running away from the idea of them signing for an English club. Exeter were rumoured before, Saracens, and now Seoul. So the view is that they need to go further afield, perhaps France, or even further than that, like Japan, let's say.
Right, yeah.
Where there mightn't be as much interest in what's happened before, or just mightn't be much knowledge of what's gone on before. So 2 talented players, they can't get a job, even though they were both found not guilty of the charges that were brought in front of them. So the story's now moved on to, well, why can't they get a job? And this is what we want to talk about. We don't want to go back over the details of the court case, and we don't want to go back onto even like their merit to Ireland, because Jackson's departure leaves a massive hole in Joe Schmidt's plans for 2019. But again, we can probably talk about that some other time. I just want to get your thoughts on why they can't get a job, because they are, in the eyes of the law, they were found not guilty of rape and sexual assault in Jackson's case, but they're essentially guilty by social media.
Right.
There's a lot of social media bullying, I guess you could say, that's going on, that there are a lot of rallies are being formed, protests, supporters group are ganging up on anybody who wants to sign them, but it just seems that they're, whether or not you believe they did or not is irrelevant because they've been found not guilty, but people deem them to be guilty in certain ways now, unfortunately, and they, as I said, they just can't find a job. So where do you sit on this?
So I suppose there are a few angles you can approach this from. Like I said, they've been found not guilty before the law, and I think that should be your departure point. You know, like any club that signs them, anybody that is looking at getting these guys on board, you just say, look, we understand the grievances of the people out there, but you have to remember that history, you know, it'll show that these guys are innocent, number one. The other side to this coin, though, is that if we look at the court case and some of the things they said and some of the allegations and some of the things that went down, it was quite disgusting, and you know, it just reminds you of a drunken bunch of frat boys, and it was just not a good situation at all. And for any club, I can fully understand why Ulster would want to disassociate themselves with that kind of behaviour. Even the IRFU disassociate themselves with that kind of behaviour. Fair enough, but to now publicly go out and hang these guys out in the streets, hang them out to dry, it kind of reminds me of, you know, the good old 1700s, you know, with the witch hunt, and you know, if you said anything, it was trial by public, out at the stake. We're going to burn you. We don't care about the course of your, you know, due course. We don't care about the law. This is it. You've now been burned at the stake, and it's a bit of a mob mentality, and I would like to think that in this day and age we've moved past that.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I think they were harshly treated by the RFU, but I can see why. It almost feels like, look, it's better for everybody if they just move on.
Yeah.
But what has essentially happened here is that they've both lost their jobs because of messages which they sent privately to each other and to other friends. That's why they've lost their job. But unfortunately, those messages, you know, were released into the public domain,
right.
So that's why they lost their job. Now, there's no doubt that this sort of stuff goes on in every clubhouse, in every sport around the world.
Right.
You think it would anyway. So, like, if you're going to get caught, then you know, these are the consequences which you have to pay. So there is the question whether or not you should lose your job over that. But if we assume that, look, this is the best thing for them to get out of Ireland, and it's the best thing then perhaps for Ulster, like, it's a new slate, you know, like, we want to make it look like, or we want to at least, we're like, look, we're doing our best to improve the image of the rugby club here. But if you supported a mid-ranking team in England, let's say, and you had the chance to sign 2 internationals, one of them would have been going to the World Cup for sure.
Right.
Would you rip up your season ticket knowing what you know about them? I don't think you would.
No, I wouldn't. No, absolutely not. First of all, I already paid for that season ticket.
Well, for next season then.
Okay, for next season. But no, I honestly wouldn't. And like you say, these are 2 very talented players. We're talking about Johnny Sexton arguably being the best 10 in the world. But who's the backup? You know, you need someone that's not just a backup, but someone that would adequately be able to fill that hole. And Paddy Jackson was on his way to be a sufficient backup. You know, Johnny Sexton injury prone, concussions, etc. Ireland, you know, flying really high right now. Go to the World Cup next year. Sexton is out in the first game, or even in the warm-up. Who's the backup? That's a really important question.
That's another point. It's awful. Yeah.
So yeah, and remember, this is still about rugby. And so Paddy Jackson, if you're saying that he's a sufficient or adequate at least backup to one of the best 10s in the world, well, and like you say, it's a mid-ranking English team or French team. You know, they have the opportunity to sign them. Why wouldn't you? You know.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think you're absolutely right. And I just thought back to this. Back in the day, I read John Smith's autobiography about his rugby career and so on. I believe it was called Captain in the Cauldron. And he said that when he was captain, or he was playing for the Sharks, and Francois Steyn was one of the guys that just came onto the scene, playing in France now. And he, in his book, he said, it was just like an 18, 19-year-old up-and-coming guy, you know, had the world at his feet, one of the youngest World Cup winners in the history, etc., etc. This guy was just, you know, he had everything in front of him, And John Smith said to him, look, if one of the pieces of advice I can give you is with all the fame and money and attention you're getting, don't go into a steady relationship. If you have someone in your life, leave it for later. And the correlation that I want to make with the current situation is that whether it was back then, whether it was in the 80s, the 90s, you know, with all the, and especially now with all the attention these guys are getting and the money thrown at them, etc. Like you say, these things happen all over the world. Look at Aaron Smith, you know, at the airport as part of the All Blacks crew squad, and goes and cheats on his wife, girlfriend, while on duty. You know, these things happen. Are they excusable? No. You know, saying they happen doesn't excuse them.
Yeah.
But the point is, like with the, you know, if we listen to John Smith, or if we look at the Aaron Smith situation, they. And it's not just in rugby, it's you know, anybody with money in the world, these things happen. And it's a private message. That's basically what it comes down to. Like I say, these were private messages. If that hadn't become public knowledge, these guys might still be playing for Ulster and Ireland.
They would,
you know?
yeah.
So I think it's one of those cases. It's kind of like an Oscar Pistorius case where, you know, the whole country and the public and everybody was hell-bent on making an example out of them. I think the punishment doesn't fit the crime.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, there was no crime according to the law. So yeah.
Well, the other thing people are saying is that they're not role models, and I get that. You know, I'm not necessarily sure you pay somebody to be a role model, though. I think there has to be that aspect of their contract too. But you buy players to win championships.
Yes,
that's what you do, and you know, to put people on seats. Now it is possible that by retaining Jackson and Olding that Ulster would have lost some supporters, but they did have 17,000 or so people sign a petition asking the Ulster branch to bring them back into the team. Who knows?
Wow,
yeah. So there were protests as well. So who knows? But you have people who are like people who are cheats in terms of like diving, getting players sent off in soccer, let's say, all the time. But like, are they bad role models as well? Like, do we want to keep them in your team when they're just constantly, like, you know, you get people who break another professional player's legs with really bad tackling.
Yeah.
I said you get people who are diving all the time to win penalties. Are they any more of a role model? Let's say these guys. As I said, I don't mind the fact that Ulster got rid of them because they're looking to make it's a clean slate for them. Look, let's start again. Yeah. But I find it hard to believe that these two guys can't get a contract though somewhere else. But look, the public opinion is pretty strong in this one, and it's a court. It's probably even though the court case happened in the United Kingdom, Belfast, in the UK, and not in the Republic of Ireland, it's definitely one of the most.
It's not the
symbolic.
same thing.
It's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing.
But whatever. It's not the. It's definitely one of the most symbolic court cases that's happened.
It is.
You know, that's affected Ireland in a really, really long time, which is a good thing, of course, from that point of view. But I'm still surprised that they can't get a job somewhere else.
I was just going to say this, Jackson, Olding, if you're listening, first of all, what the fuck were you thinking? Start swearing already. What were you thinking? But no, secondly, the thing is that for these guys, go just cut their losses. Go over to Japan, play there for 2-3 years. You know, the rugby isn't as intense there. They might actually prolong their career with a year or two if they go play there. Make some good money, big bucks. And then sign a 2-3 year contract. Wait till the storm has blown over,
that's what people
because
are saying.
It will blow over.
Yeah.
It will. And like I say, the court cases, the history will stand. They were found not guilty. If they just go out of the public eye, 2-3 years from now, there will be new supporters. There will be new brands. You know, we're going to talk about after the 2019 World Cup. That'll be a good time for them to come back, start fresh. You know. And who knows? I think they still have a lot of rugby left in them. They're both still quite young.
Young. They.
So it's not, their careers doesn't have to be over, I think is the thing. So it's a very controversial topic. There's a lot of angles to approach it from. Any last thoughts?
No, maybe one of these videos in the future, especially during the off season, we can talk about what actually Ireland are going to do next, because the future of Joey Carberry especially is up in the air at the moment. It's a pretty divisive issue back home right now. We'll know in the next week or so if he's going to be staying with Leinster or if he's going to be essentially strong-armed into moving to Ulster, just on loan for a season. We can have a chat about that, I'd say, in the future podcast. But for now, that's probably all we need to say about Stuart Olding and Paddy Jackson.
By the way, Paddy Jackson, the most Irish name ever.
From Northern Ireland.
Right. But if you have any thoughts, share. If you're from the Northern Hemisphere, especially if you're from Ireland or the Republic, the UK part, seen them play. What do you think of them as players? What do you think of the situation? Do you think this is being over politicized? Do you think it's the right thing, the wrong thing? So please comment, share, like, subscribe, and all those other things that people always tell you to do on YouTube. Thank you very much.